welcome once again. Drive time, drive time, drive time. You're going to keep my company for a little bit of time, and I'm going to keep yours. Hope that y'all are having a fantastic day. It's almost the weekend. And hope that you're going to get some rest this weekend, all right? So, man, what are we going to talk about today? What are we going to talk about today? I actually have a scenario that I want to share, and maybe I can get your feedback, right? How many of you would agree that dealing with children nowadays, in this century, what century we're in? 21st century? Something like that. Let's put it this way. Dealing with children in the 2000s, 2020 to 2025 has gotten quite challenging. I don't know how many of you would agree. And I'm telling you, I have a scenario that I want to share, and I want to get your feedback on it. All right. So I don't know how many of you grew up in very households where your parents they were like no nonsense type of people. Like literally, if you slip, man, they put a whoop into your backside like you would never believe. That's how I grew up, right? When I tell you that my parents, they were very strict, right? And so, how many of you believe that it's okay, within reason, nowadays, to discipline your children to the point where you may have to put your hands on them? Now, I'm not saying to abuse them, but you may have to, you may have to reprimand or restrain, right? So there's a guy that had a situation with one of his kids. Well, pretty much all of his kids, right? And so one of the reasons why there is some issues is because he and the mother didn't work out. So, separation, divorce and stuff like that, it tends to have an effect, right, on not only the adults, but the children in the relationship. And out of 10, the children have some type of resentment. Hey, how are you? Animosity, towards the father, and it the father to try to have relationships with the children. It becomes difficult, and I mean, because no child ever wants to see their parents separate, right? Because they want to see their parents together, right? But divorce happens. And so there's a gentleman that is trying his best to have a relationship with his children, and there is some resentment, and so he buys them gifts or he tries to be there financially, which I don't think that is enough to try to buy your children. I think that quality time and creating memories is very significant. And sometimes I get it. Distance prevents one from doing that. But men, especially when the children are with the mother that he's no longer with, you have to make an effort. You really have to make an effort to try to have some type of relationship with your children. So anyway, especially when they're teenagers, and as girls are going through their teenage years, if the father has been absent or not quite involved, I believe that the girls begin to go through some type of, and I hate to use the term, but for lack of a better term, daddy issues, where they look for men to fill the void that their biological father couldn't fill. And sometimes they end up in abusive relationships, or they end up bouncing from relationship to relationship because they're looking for something that their dad was never able to give to them during their childhood years, and they missed out that father to daughter relationship, or that father to son relationship. So they end up doing that. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of young men that grow up in broken homes with their mother, 9 times out of 10, they grow up a little bit soft. Because, as much as a woman is a subject matter expert at many things, it's very difficult for a woman to teach a man how to be a man. And so, and you see it a lot, the young man picks up certain habits and from the mother and just become very soft, or you may want to say metrosexual. If you don't know what metrosexual is, a metrosexual male is one of them guys who, they take care of themselves. They got good skin routine, and they get their little nails done and yada 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 and stuff like that. Always look sweet. But dealing with teenagers in this day and age, whether it's in a broken home or a home with both parents, can be a challenge. And so there's a young man that's having an issue with one of his children, teenager, because the teenager is dealing with peer pressure. The teenager is dealing with anxiety. The teenager is just going through a lot as a teenager. I guess hormones and all this other stuff is kicking in, right? And so the teenager is acting out, doing things that gets under her father's skin. I'm creating, follow me now. And so the father has been trying to be patient, to be understanding, to be empathetic. But kids have a way of getting under your skin. And so, the father has tried many things, taking away electronic devices, grounding, and so on and so forth. And it just seems like this teenager, I don't know, it's finding more creative ways of getting under the father's skin, to the point where they're just doing some things that you have to scratch your head and say, like, my goodness, what in the world is happening? And so, you as a parent or you as a teenager that's watching this, do you think that kids have a tendency, or it's possible for kids to push their parents' buttons to the point where the parent can get so upset, right, that they have to put hands on them, slap them up a little bit, take away and confiscate various devices? Do you think that it can happen? And if so, would you blame the parent? Would you blame the parent for implementing such drastic disciplinary measures because the teenager is just, I don't know if you want to say it's getting out of control, but the teenager is really getting under the parent's skin. And watch this. This is where partnership between the parents needs to be very significant. And again, I'm creating a scenario. So in this particular scenario, the father is a strict disciplinarian, whereas the mother, good cop, bad cop situation, right? Whereas the mother tends to be more of a, what's the word now? Pacifier. Oh, children go through changes, and children, so on and so forth. And I remember when I was growing up, I went through my teenage years, and what these children are doing now, it's not as bad as I used to be, and so on and so forth. And to scratch your head and wonder, well, my goodness, when we were growing up, I mean, I'm middle-aged, right? I'm not that old because I still got a lot of mileage on me, right? But when I look back over my more youthful, because I'm still a youth, years, if I could go back in time and redo my childhood, my teenage years, there are a lot of things that I possibly would not have done. How many of you have done some things, man, that behind your parents' backs, that when you look back, you're like, my goodness, man, I was bad. I was really just not listening, and I was really just sneaky. I was. Would you go back if you had the time to, if you had the chance to go back on a time machine? Would you leave things as is, or would you try to make some changes? Me personally, when I sit down and I look at my children and how they are now, if I was to be given the chance to go back on a time machine, I would change, and I would do a lot of things differently. Like, I probably would have been more obedient to my parents, right? And I probably would have been more strategic in setting up certain foundations for my future. And so when I see young people nowadays who just don't want to take any guidance, because another thing too, young people nowadays, they know everything. As soon as you try to give them some type of direction, they know everything. They cut you off, and they are so smarter than you, not realizing that you, as the adult, you probably have a library of references that you can pull from to say, the reason that I'm suggesting that you not do the things that you're doing is because I remember when I was growing up, right? I did similar or worse, and it didn't work out for me, right? And this is where adults need to partner, not go against each other, and don't allow children to use tactics, to use especially parents against each other. It's not good. Parents need to come on a united front, and they need to synchronize in their strategic approach as to how they're going to provide guidance to their children, especially to our young women, right? Because our young women, my goodness, they are being influenced so much by social media that it's ridiculous. You know, they are so influenced that to me, I get so annoyed when I see the eyelashes, when I see the edges down to their eyebrows, and I'm like, my goodness, your hair wasn't meant to be plastered all over your forehead like that. And it looks ridiculous, but they think it's cute because this is what they see on social media, right? Then, you know, not to talk about, you know, the way they carry themselves, and then when you listen to some of them, the way they talk, and you're like, my goodness, you know, listen to the words coming out of your mouth, and young lady, can you carry yourself like a lady? But again, these behaviors, these negative, toxic behaviors, is what they're exposed to on social media, on TV, peer pressure, and stuff like that. And then, you know, they start to get involved in the drinking and the smoking and all these different types of things, not realizing that those habits are not healthy. They are not healthy. And I had an epiphany, and I said, my goodness, you know, you're telling me that even my little wines and stuff, I'm gonna have to pour it out because these young people, you know, when you're not home, they may go and up your wine, when your wine is there for your Friday evenings when you're trying to unwind, but because they are curious, they go and indulge in things that they're not supposed to be indulging in. And so now as adults, you have to second guess, and you have to hide things, and you have to, you know, wonder what they're doing. And it's draining. And this is why parents need to have discussions amongst themselves when they have teenagers that, my goodness, teenagers, boy, they are nothing but, some of them, because some of you may have some teenagers that are angels, but the rest of us, we have some teenagers that, my goodness, if we could get them back in diapers and leave them there, it would be such a blessing. But unfortunately, they grow up. So how do you suggest that parents who are dealing with teenagers who are struggling with peer pressure, anxiety, depression, and wanting to be somebody else than themselves, how do you deal with that, right? And if you are in that situation, how are you navigating that particular predicament? I'm asking for a friend, right? I mean, do they push your buttons to the point where sometimes, you know, you really want to reach out and touch them? And when you reach out and touch them, do you feel bad? I'm asking for a friend. How do we go about next steps? Because this generation, my goodness, I believe that they're on the brink of extinction. on the brink of extinction because they can't survive without electronic devices. Ask your son or your daughter when you get home today, when was the last time they read a good book, and what was the book about? Ask them to give you a verbal book report and come back and tell me how they did. I'm asking you, right? And then ask them about the last TikTok video that they watched, and I can almost guarantee that they can give you more details about the TikTok video than they can about a good book that they've read. Do the research. And watch this. When they come, when was the last time you sat with your family at the dinner table and actually had a dinner once a week and they put their electronic devices away? When was the last time you went to a restaurant and you just look around the restaurant and you see people sitting to dine together, and the majority of them, while they're sitting there, watch this now, the appetizers and the hors d'oeuvres, whatever they're called, are on the table, but 90% of the time they're not so concerned about having conversations while they're munching on the appetizers. They're munching on the appetizers and they're on their phones. Take a look around the next time you go. We have become a society that is so addicted and so distracted that we're almost lost. And listen, I look at computers all day. And when I get home, I don't want to see another computer. I want to, I have books. I want to read a book. I want to do something that is going to stimulate my cognitive skills, not my visual skills, because it's very much necessary. And another thing too, you realize that because of these electronic devices, a lot of our people are dealing with all types of mental issues. And I'm disgusted when I see parents give their little babies electronic devices to cause them to have them calm down. No, find a way to soothe them, not an electronic device. You're a parent, so parent. So that's my spiel for today. Not gonna be super religious, but it's just something that I am noticing, that our children, our young people, my goodness, they are going down a path that if we don't do something soon, it is going to be a major problem. It's going to be a major problem. Many of them, they can't write. They can't do script. Remember we used to do script in school? Because they're so used to texting, and texting has gotten so bad now where a lot of people are now gravitating towards emojis. So emojis express what you want to say, so they can't even type out the text anymore. We are becoming a dumber and dumb society. Literally. Think about it. Let that sink in for a minute. All right. So listen, I'm not gonna make these videos very long. Stay tuned, because getting ready to go back into the evening podcast in the new year. But right now we're just gonna do these little talks, and you keep my company. I don't know. It just seems like this commute home is a nice time to do a few minutes. So maybe we're onto something. We may, again, I said yesterday, we may start calling this thing drive time, right? And just let it do its thing. And see where it goes until the new year, when we jump full-fledged back into our podcast, I believe on Monday evenings. But stay tuned for that, because it's coming, man. All right, so listen, I am gonna sign off right here, and until tomorrow, peace. I'm out of here.